over the years, camera sensors have become very clean, right? As compared to early on when cameras were grainy, were out of focus. Camera sensors used to even pick up a lot of aberrations, like chromatic aberrations, what we term halation now. As time goes on, we've realized that a lot of footages or a lot of sensors are becoming cleaner as they go on. Comparing the 5D Mark IV to the 750D, right? The sensor on the 5D Mark IV can work very well with noise. So let's say at ISO 1000. The same can be said for the 750D, right? Compare even that 750D to early on cameras like the film cameras. A lot of us didn't come and meet film cameras, to be very honest. I didn't come and meet film cameras, but when I became a photographer, I was fully invested in digital cameras. And these digital SLRs are way cleaner than film cameras that used to be, in the market, right? Why am I saying this? Clean looks are perfect. Clean looks works very well. Clean looks are good for portrait shots. Clean looks are good for corporate, videos where they need to see every detail they paid for and all that. Nobody's stopping you or nobody's saying clean looks are not good, right? But what I also want to let you know is you can't just stop at clean looks. You can't just end up just producing anything clean. Well, I do that a lot. I used to produce, not that I used to, I still produce a lot of clean pictures, to be very honest, and in some way, somehow, I stylize it by adding a lot of colors to it. That's where my color grading comes in, right? So today's video, I really want to talk about a particular plugin which can emulate film looks from early on film cameras that were used to produce images that till date are looking way better, and a lot of cinematographers, a lot of photographers, a lot of creatives are trying to achieve. The team at Dehancer reached out to me to review this particular beta plugin software for photo editing softwares. Yes, it's now available for photo editing softwares like Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, and Affinity Pro. I don't use Affinity Pro, so I don't have anything to say about Affinity Pro, but I can talk about these three other softwares, which is the Photoshop, Lightroom, and Capture One. I have been using this particular plugin for a month now, so I think I'm in the right position to be able to talk about what this particular plugin can do for you and what it has been doing for me. I want to show you exactly what it has. I think you've seen images I've posted on my Instagram, right? And you might have loved them, and you might probably think, oh, Joe is creating a new preset. Well, yes, I wish I was creating a new preset, but most of the edits was coming from this particular emulation program. So I have two favorite tabs I would really want to show you in this particular plugin. So let's just jump right into my laptop and show you what exactly the Dehancer plugin will be doing on my images. Alright, so back here in my laptop where most of the magic happens, I would probably want to get some things right off the block. So first off, you can get the Dehancer plugin for $199 on your website, dehancer.com. Just make sure you try and purchase it yourself. I'm going to leave down in the description a link to this website, and also I'm putting up a promo code CJD Film. Use that thing to get 10% off $199 and try and purchase this particular Dehancer film plugin, right? Tools include 62 film profiles, Kodak 2383 print film, CMY color head, film grain, bloom, halation, defringe, vignettes, user presets, and many other tools that are included in the plugin, as you'll probably be seeing in the video. Right, so in today's video, I'll probably want to divide it into 3 sessions. I'll do one for Capture One, do one for Lightroom, and also do one for Photoshop. Right, so before we get into it, I just want to take you through a few things that you need to know. The Dehancer Capture One plugin setup guide, right? There's a setup guide that comes with the zip folder. It shows you how to install and all that. I want you to pay attention to this. In the following dialog, select appropriate options for editing, right? And this is what they need in here. Pay attention to this. We'll be using that in Capture One very soon. And also they did mention some recommended raw settings. Correct the most severe deviations and exposure and white balance, which of course we'll probably do that. Use a linear profile, contrast curve if possible. I'll show you where the linear profile is. Disable noise reduction and sharpening. Avoid any local enhancements which might cause visible halos, export files and all that. So the linear profile in Capture One will exhibit that of a log file or a log footage, right? Dehancer was basically made for DaVinci Resolve users, where they usually work on a lot of log footages from whatever footages they've shot. Right, so the linear response is supposed to mimic that for still photos. So if you can see over here, the base characteristic, the ICC profile is Mach 4, right, and the curve adjustment, which is the linear response. So the linear response, if I should hold Option and click on it, you can see what it does, right? So I did that, made a few adjustments, pushed in my white, reduced my highlight just to bring back some details, and open up my shadows. And also I reduce my sharpening and any other noise reduction processes that are going to be seen in here. The next thing I'll do is right click, edit with, and I would have to probably go and look for the Dehancer plugin on my PC. I'm using a Windows PC, so I'm able to locate it. I think for Mac you can also do the same thing, so just locate where it's installed on the Mac, then you just click on it, double tap on Dehancer, and that opens. So I've been using this for a month now, right? Dehancer provided me a license for me to get accustomed with whatever it is I have to talk about in today's review, and I think I'm in the right position to go about a lot of things. So if you see my edit with, I have Dehancer showing right here in my Capture One. Right, so let me close that for Capture One and jump right into the Dehancer photo app. Right, to my left you can see film profiles, to my right you can see different tabs over here. I'm going to close the various tabs, and I would probably like to say this before I continue. Whatever it is I'm about to do here in this Dehancer plugin will probably be seen in Lightroom and Photoshop. The interface for the plugin is similar for the two other editing software, so there are just a minor changes you would have to do in the post-processing software when it comes to Lightroom and Lightroom and Photoshop, which you would have to look out for. So let's just get into editing some of editing this particular image we put here. So what I'll do is I'll just turn off this, right, and come here, come to my print film, and I'll choose Kodak 2083. If you know what print films are or PFEs are, they usually are characteristics on film. On film when they are printed. Usually you can find these characteristics on the paper that is going to be used to do the printing, right? And the film will be applied on the paper. You get to the Kodak 2383 or any other profile that's available here, just so that you get the characteristic of it when you apply the film on the paper and you print it, and you get the real-time film look on your image. So this is the digital version. This is why the plugin is here to help you create a real-time film look or film effects on your footage, right? So this is the before, the film look, and there's the after, before and after. Nothing has been done over here. So if you take a look at the source has temperature tint, which is similar to the temperature and tint you already know, right? I'm not going to do anything to that yet. Expand has both black points and white points, and a color mode which gives you a normal and a luma curve, right? So with the luma you're just affecting your luminosity values, and the normal you're affecting both the luminosity values and your color. Currently I would like to open up my blacks, not crash it, so open it up, right? And right about there is fine. When it comes to film emulation, usually you see your shadows a bit lifted or your blacks lifted, so that's a characteristic of a film look. I'm going to crash down my whites just a little bit, right? So this is the before, the expand, and after the expand. After I'm done, I usually like to work with these three tools here: source, expand, and print. There are further explanations to what these do on their websites. When it comes to their blog posts, they have an article explaining each and every tool that's available here in the plugin. So I'm not really going to go into details. I'm just going to show you what they do for me and what I've been able to learn from using the Dehancer plugin. So this photo plugin is a beta version 2, which is primarily for Capture One and Affinity Pro. I think the version 1 supported both Photoshop and Lightroom, so I'm trying to test this for Capture One. That's why I started with Capture One, then we'll later figure a way out with Lightroom. So these are the available films that are here. Right. You can categorize a film into color negative, motion picture, color positive, black and white, instant, exotic, right? So let's see color negative, if there's anything here in color negative I would like to use. Kodak Pro Image 100, Kodak Portra, Kodak Supra, Kodak Ultra Max. Let's see. Okay, let's go to color positive. I think, yeah, Kodak Ektachrome. Yeah, this is one of the film profiles I like to use when I come to the Dehancer plugin. The Kodak Ektachrome works most of the time for all of my images, and I fall in love. Sometimes when I really want to achieve that faded out film look, there's a Polaroid Polarchrome 35mm Experiment 1986, right? But today's video I'll use this, and you can see here the push and pull EV or push and pull EV, right? This is related to I think exposure and also color contrast for the available film profile, 63 film profiles that are here, right? Just because you would have to film profiles react differently with light, right? So the more you expose it to light, the different color contrast and exposure values you get. So if I should move this to the right, with this particular film, you're seeing an increase in exposure and a decrease in exposure, right? When I go to, let's go to all films, and I use an ADOX color implosion, when I move it to the right, you can see a change in color contrast, right? Instead of exposure values, you're seeing color change instead, right? So I would just reset, undo, so that we can go back to using the Ektachrome. All right, so we are back. We're using a Kodak Ektachrome E100. The next thing I would like to do is to come to the color head before I move to film grain, halation, and bloom and vignette. Right, color head is more like the master color balance tool you can find in Photoshop and even in Capture One. Right, this particular tool, let me just go back to Capture One and show you the tool I'm talking about. So in color balance, we have this master tool, right? You can work your way around it. Okay, so back to Dehancer. If I want to make any changes, I would probably like to say maybe push some blues into this. And if I feel like the adjustment is too huge, I'll hold Control or Command on the keyboard. You can see these two parentheses show up around the circular, knob over here. You can just make minute changes to, the said photo. I'll probably like to add some cyan to this. And let's see, some greens. Let's see the before and after. Right, so just minute adjustments. You can see gang over here. When I click on gang and I make any adjustment to the various sliders that are here, they all move in the same values. Right, preserving exposure. Whenever you play around with colors can be found in your exposures also. So if you want a clear example, try and move, let's say, your temperature value in Lightroom or Photoshop or Capture One. You can see the change in your exposure values when you change the said photo into black and white. So this gives you the option to preserve your preserve your exposure here in the app. The impact is relatively similar to what we already know as opacity. So if you want more of the impact, we just keep it 100. If you want to reduce the impact of the color head, we just reduce it. Furthermore explanations of what the color head does can be seen in the article post, so I'm sure I'm going to link it down in the description. Just make sure you check it out. Right, so the three other tools that make film emulation is film grain, halation, and bloom. Let me quickly go through film grain. Immediately I click on the film grain, you can see these available tools over here. So the size of the film, amount, resolution. One thing I like about the engine here when it comes to film grain in the Dehancer Photo plugin is such that you're able to maintain the resolution of the image, or in real time make sure it looks like a film photo that has been shot. Right, with film photos, the characteristic of the resolution is seen to be a little bit blurry as compared to when you're trying to use other softwares to emulate film. So I'm going to keep it at 50, in between a sharper resolution and a blurry resolution. and you're also able to control where you see most of your grains, right? So I'm going to keep it out of the midtones just because I want to see, you know, a little bit on the midtones. Same can be said for the shadows. But when it comes to the highlights, any negative film has a lot of grains in their highlights, so a little bit above the midtones and the shadows, right? And you have the option to also change the color composition of your grains. Do you want it to be as colorful as you can see over here? Let it process, right? So when I move all the way to the right, you can see how colorful the grain becomes. This is also a characteristic of most of the colored film cameras that used to be in the system. So I'm just going to keep it at 53 and I'm okay and good to go. Right, so film type, there's the negative. Let me zoom in just so that I can see the difference. So there's the negative, which I usually like to use a lot, and the positive, which I like to stay away from, right? So this is how the positive is. It's more like it's embedded in the image, while the negative is on top of the image, which is usually what I like to use. So I keep it here, and the mode, I won't leave it at digital. I want it to be analog. So when I turn it to digital, just take a look at how the grains are going to be applied on the image, right? Not something I would like to see. I like analog more than digital, right? So to the very next two tabs, which will probably sell the film look we are going for, let me turn it on, both of them on, right? And right off the top, you can see the change that we've made. So with halation, when I turn on the mask mode, you can see what the halation is doing to the image. I mean the areas to which you can find the halation. Halation in our modern time is what we will probably term as chromatic aberration. I feel like later in the future, when we're looking back at time, we can probably try and emulate what we were getting as, you know, aberrations here or during this time. So maybe in the future, chromatic aberration will be appreciated like how halation is appreciated now, and not back then when it wasn't appreciated. Okay, so these are well explained in the article as well, so I'd probably like to make minor adjustments. I had a friend telling me halation has to be felt and not seen. I'm yet to see that. Alright, so I'm going to increase the impact because I want to see it, not feel it. I turn on the max mode and probably change the hue of the halation. Just because you are predominantly in a yellow scene, I would want to see the hue in the red scene. And halation also affects your midtones, just so you know. So you have to be very careful of how much you apply on your image. Right, so and I'll go to bloom. Bloom is more like putting on a pro mist on your lens whenever it is you're shooting, right? It's a characteristic of, you know, having softer looking images, right? The idea is that when light hits your pro mist is supposed to have a filter on it where it softens up the light and makes the spread of the light on the subject look more like a glow, right? So the idea also, you usually get to see more of the effect of the bloom around more highlighted areas. So the more you apply it, the more you increase the impact, the more the engine looks for the very minute parts of your images and pushes, you know, the effect. So when I turn on the max mode, you can clearly see where you're going to see majority of, you know, the bloom, as you can see on her cheek, on her forehead. So I'm just going to reduce it. I need the details, right? Not a lot of the bloom, right? So, and I'm going to reduce the source limiter. So by moving it to the right, I'm reducing the source of the bloom. I turn off the max mode, and this is the before, right? And after the bloom. So with the film grain, I feel like I need more of the film, and I'll increase the size of the grain also. Right, with vignettes, we all know how the vignette works. I really don't use it much here, right? But it works similarly to what you can see in other editing softwares. Yeah, that's that to using Dehancer to make this film emulated look on this my image I shot with my 5D Mark IV when I visited White Sands some time ago. Also, you can create a preset from whatever it is you've done. So if you have similar looking images you'd want to work on with this particular plugin, right, don't mind all these ones I've created. You can just create a preset with the name you probably want, and also all the other things I've done so far. It shows here with the exception of the vignettes, right? And I just add presets, then you can see it down here. So if I should let a process, if I should say reset whatever it is we've done, which sends us back to this, and I click on the Kodak Ektachrome, it sends me back to what we did when the adjustments were made. And you get to also make other adjustments if you want. Before that, I think let me just cool down the picture a notch, right, and say maybe increase the tint a little bit. All right, I think that sells it. Let me see. Yep, that sells it. I like what I'm saying. All I have to do is just right now click OK, and it sends me right back into Capture One. So right here in Capture One, you can see what we did, right? This is the before and this is the after, right? It clearly doesn't look like what we finished up in the Dehancer plugin, which usually is a problem I have been facing for a while now. So I would like to mention the kind of problems when I'm done with all the other softwares. But yeah, this is clearly how this will look after, you know, I fix the level values. So this, let me hide the tools, sorry. So in full screen mode, this is the before, before Dehancer plugin, and this is after Dehancer plugin. So this is the clean look I did mention when I started talking about the Dehancer plugin in the video, right? So you can have a clean looking image, fix your exposure values, your temperature, Kelvin, white balance values, maybe color graded, just to give you that clean look. And if you want to stylize it the more, you can just send into the Dehancer plugin and it does all the amazing work for you. So you can clearly see the difference, right? We have the halation around the hair, around the shoulder, some around the hand, and also the grains, the colorful grains. If you don't want the colorful grains, you can reduce the saturation in there, right? So let's just jump right into Lightroom and also talk about the difference when it comes to, you know, using this particular plugin in Lightroom. And I'll probably mention that also in Photoshop. Photoshop and Lightroom are similar, so I might probably not go into Photoshop. So let's just jump into Lightroom and make a few adjustments there. So let's close this. All right, so here we're in Lightroom and I want to make some things clear. So literally it's the same guide you're going to get, how to install it and all that, how to update your film profiles, the 63 film profiles that are available. Now I want to mention this in here. Working with photos in RAW, when it comes to Photoshop and Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, you'd have to also mimic the flat look I mentioned in Capture One by using the linear response. But here in Lightroom, they've given you certain adjustments to make, right? Adobe standard, exposure -1, contrast -40, blacks +60, linear curve, sharpening 0, noise reduction 0, color space, and bit depth, right? If you're shooting with the iPhone and using Apple RAW DNG, that's all that. I don't use that. I don't use that to take pictures. So you're going to be working on this image. So like they said, we should change this to what Adobe standard, right? -1 exposure, -40, I think. Am I correct? Yeah, -40 +60 blacks, right? 60 blacks, then a linear curve. So this is a linear curve, nothing has been done to it. Our detail, which is a sharpening at 0, and what else? So what's so limiting about this is you can't make any other adjustment just because you've been able to, you know, you're trying to mimic the flat look here. But I think we can do a few, right? Maybe reduce the highlights, not really open up the shadows because the shadows are open up, right? Increase the clarity. Right click, edit in, then edit in Dehancer Lightroom. So the reason why I have this here, the guide shows you how to, you know, mimic this here or have this Dehancer Lightroom X here. It shows you all the adjustments to make. So if I should come back into the Lightroom, I think you're given the same raw recommendations, right? So TIFF, sRGB 16240, that's okay. So back to Lightroom, we have all that. Then just click on edit. So like I mentioned, you clearly see similar, interface. It's not different plugins, the same plugin. The only difference here is the adjustment you have to make on your image to get that flat looking feel. To get that flat looking feel. To get that flat looking feel before you jump right into you jump right into Dehancer, right? So let's make some few adjustments here and there. Make sure Kodak, let me hide this first, right? Exposure, contrast, color density, temperature, will make it a bit colder, and add some greens in here. Color head, maybe some warmth, cyan, and a bit of magenta into this. Well, let me add some reds instead. So film, halation, and bloom. I'm just going to reduce the exposure, because from my previous video, I think I've mentioned that to see the effect of color grading, you just have to work with a wall exposed image. If you haven't watched that yet, I'll link it up here. Just make sure you watch and learn a thing or two about color grading, right? So I think the film grain is too much. In the midtones, reduce it. In the shadows, also reduce it, right? And I'll probably keep it in the highlights where most of the work will be. I'll probably reduce also the color head. This time I'm not looking for a colorful grain. Increase the size a little bit. But with the bloom and halation, I like where they are because I didn't even see much of it. So what I would like to do is to amplify the halation. Let's see if we can clearly tell if the bloom is making much of a difference. So this is before the bloom and this is after the bloom. I think there is, right? So I made it too cool. Let me too warm. Okay, so we clearly have an image, right? So let's see a preview before and after. I'll click on OK, and voila, we'll probably also have to see that in Lightroom also. Let's just wait. Lightroom, right? I still face the same issue here, so I'm just going to fix the blacks in terms of the contrast levels as compared to what we saw when we were editing the Dehancer app. So yeah, this is what we've been able to do so far. I did mention that the halation also affects your midtones, so as you can see, it's affecting my midtones, but it has achieved the purpose I wanted it to achieve. Okay, right, so concerning Photoshop and Lightroom, they literally have the same interface, right? So I don't really have to go into Photoshop, because if you've worked with Adobe Camera Raw, you clearly know that it's the same settings or the same interface you're seeing here in Lightroom that you're going to see in Adobe Camera Raw, with just different names, but the engine here in Lightroom works the same way. Clearly, you can tell that with Photoshop, you also have to do the same standard profile and all that. So yeah, this is what the plugin does for you as a photographer if you want to probably emulate film on your images that you have shot. If you want to have a real-time looking film image, you can use the Dehancer plugin. For $199, use my short code or use my promo code to get 10% off, and just enjoy using this particular plugin. Right, so far so good. The plugin has done exactly what it said it would. It has emulated film for me. The engine in there works so much well. Right, so there are right off some things I would want to mention when it comes to using this particular plugin. Right, let's open it. So let me copy the settings we did over here to say another image. Right, then let's open this in the Dehancer plugin. I'd want to mention a few things about what I think they can improve when it comes to the Dehancer plugin. Right, so there are a few things I would like to mention. So when it comes to any editing software or any plugin, I feel like, but before I get into that, I feel like because it's a beta version and you're trying it out, I would like to mention a few things I hope they improve in the full version. I have seen videos for that of the first or the earlier versions, and I don't think they did anything to it. But for the beta version to work for Capture One, that's kudos to them. I'd want to mention a few things. Right, when it comes to using Lightroom to even edit your photos, right, you probably have to see real life or real time the changes each and every profile is giving you. So when I come to say Lightroom, which Lightroom is already open, and I go to, let's say, profiles, and say I'm using any of my profiles, you can clearly tell that when I hover the cursor on the available profiles here, it shows you a preview of what you are going to get as an editor in, you know, the in the particular software you're editing in. So I wish in the full version they give you a lifetime preview instead of me having to click on it before I can see the preview. Right, certain images are huge enough to wait for the processing, so I'd love to see that in the updated version. Right, so secondly, I have noticed that you're not able to use, you know, the arrow bars to even move around. Right, clearly you can tell when I tap on the arrow bars, all it does is move up and down it scrolls up and down the available profiles that are here. I would have loved to see a scroll bar instead of me using the arrow key to move up and down. And the arrow key should actually be used to, you know, have a selection based you know, engine when I probably want to move around these profiles that are available. Right, so with the other thing I also want to mention, you can't edit multiple images in this particular plugin. You would have to edit each and every picture single-handedly. Right, so you pick up this image, you edit it, and when you're done, you can't edit another image right in here. You would have to open the Dehancer plugin. I feel like the Dehancer plugin is so heavy on your PC. They should give you the option to, you know, be able to edit 2 or 3 or 4 more pictures at a go whenever it is you want to, you know, work on images or probably produce film enhanced emulation images in the plugin. Yeah, so I think that's also one thing I would want to see fixed. So there's also one thing I want to mention here about the Dehancer Pro. I feel like they need to have little side notes to the various, you know, tools that are here, what they do and what they can do for you as an editor here. If you're new to Dehancer, like I was when I started using this, I had to figure my way out. Right, so if you're new to Dehancer, I feel like they should provide little side notes like how, you know, Capture One shows you, okay, this brush, a draw max brush, use this brush strokes to draw max. Yes, I know you know, details of this has been provided on the article on the blog site, but I would also love to see that inbuilt in the app where, you know, I just have to hover the cursor on the particular tool and it shows me exactly what the tool is doing in my image. So I feel like they can also improve upon that which will probably help anybody who's going to use this as an editor. One last thing before I leave, I feel like they can make this plugin an inbuilt plugin instead of a second window plugin. So just like a lot of other tabs that are available here, if they can make it an inbuilt plugin for the various tabs here in, let's say, Capture One, and maybe I don't think they can do that for Lightroom, sure, no problem. But with Photoshop, like how Retouching Academy has an inbuilt plugin, I feel like Dehancer should also have a similar look when it comes to Photoshop, where you can just tap on the tool and it opens up in the app. So it should be an inbuilt app for Photoshop and maybe Capture One, but for Lightroom, we can pardon that. So yeah, that should be it about Dehancer. So far so good. Dehancer has done everything, like I said, for me, and I feel like this is a good plugin for all those creatives out there who are looking to creating film emulated looks on their images. I'll probably do a video on Dehancer for DaVinci Resolve. I've started using DaVinci Resolve, and bit by bit I'm learning a thing or two, but the Dehancer plugin has made it quite easier for me to work around my video footages when it comes to editing my looks in in DaVinci. I even used the Dehancer to edit my earlier footage when you guys saw me before we entered into my laptop. Okay, so smack the like button if you love this video, if you love what I did with Dehancer, and if you probably like to enjoy the benefits of Dehancer. They have a 2-week trial. You can just register, sign up, and enjoy Dehancer for 2 weeks. And if you want to purchase it, $199. If you want to use my promo code TJDFilm, use it, get 10% off, and enjoy the Dehancer plugin. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.